Oh, you want to do?
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the SlimNation One-on-Ones Experience. And we are a sister podcast of the Portsmouth Coffee Talk. And we're here, and this is a conversation one-on-ones with, and the one-on-ones, that's why I have the S on the end of it, because sometimes it's two people, not just one-on-one. But we also are live here on the Slim Nation channel and Portsmouth Coffee Talk channel. So you get an opportunity, as well as Facebook. So you get an opportunity to see wherever you're watching. And I'm Slim Overton, and thanks for joining us. And I have some special guests here, and they're no strangers to the show. They were here before and talking about Alzheimer's uh, and dementia, and great information they shared. And I want to thank Carol for sharing such a personal story, and the doctor for giving us all the details that we need to know from a professional standpoint. But anyway, I'm going to let my guests introduce themselves, and then we'll start the conversation. And as always, you're welcome to make your comments during the broadcast in real time, or if you have any questions for the doctor or Carol, please put them in the chat and I'll pass them on. All right, Carol.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carol Turner, and I am right here in Portsmouth, Virginia. And I am a participant of the AHEAD study, and that is based out of the EVMS building over in Norfolk, Virginia. And I've been in the study for almost 4 years. And when I joined, I ended up being the first African American in the nation to join the study. And I'm just happy to be here again.
And Carol, before the doctor introduces herself, you said you were the first African American in the study. What's the significance of that? Except for being the first, is it something that's significant about us being in the study? Period.
Well, the thing about it is, James, I didn't think it was, I didn't feel it was significant simply because I shouldn't have been the first one. And that's
Right.
why I have the journey that I have. And we've been going out speaking to every community um, individuals because more African Americans need to take part in studies, period, because there's not enough data for them to see if it actually works for us. So my being the first person was shocking to me. As a matter of fact, Dr. Quavi told me that on a broadcast. So I didn't even know
Right.
it. Um, but I'm happy to trailblaze, and that's basically how I look at it. And I'm looking for a lot to follow.
Yeah, indeed. And, in our community, we used to, it's always been, people that were suffering from memory loss and things like that. And we always might have called it old timers. We might not even use that term. We just
So,
attributed it to,
see
they're
now.
getting older now. Senile. That's the word. That's the word I
Yeah,
was looking for. Senile.
yeah.
And it actually, we found out later, it goes a little bit further than that. So, Doctor, introduce yourself and welcome to the Slim Nation One-on-Ones Experience.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. This is so exciting. Um, this is, I think, the second uh, time that I'm attending. And my name is Dr. Hamid Okravi. I am the director of Comprehensive Memory Center at Goldrich Neurohealth Institute within the EVMS and now ODU. And what I do, I see patients with cognitive disorders or people who are concerned, even don't have cognitive disorders, but they are concerned about memory issues due to family, history, or risk factors, and so on. And also, I do quite a few different research studies, clinical trials. I conduct clinical trials. We have about, I think, 22 active research studies right now going on. And of course, one of them is the AHEAD study that Carol happened to join. Think about probably 3 years ago. I think, Carol, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So it's like kind of yesterday then when we had that conversation with you, you know, mom and, and your brother. And we talked about that. You just jumped in. And I wanted just to emphasize on what Carol said about the importance of different walk of lives to be part of these studies. As Carol mentioned, um, the data that we have right now available for African Americans in terms of medications or side effects related to medications that are FDA approved in Alzheimer's disease and other fields as well is not sufficient. We essentially don't know if these medications work, or not. Well, we think it does. They do work for different races and ethnicities, but we really need data to support that. And for the AHEAD study, uh, the AHEAD study, the whole nationwide global, this is a global study, more than 1,400 people are part of the AHEAD study, but I think number of African Americans participated in the study is less than 40. So, and in fact, AHEAD study is one of the studies that has been able to recruit underrepresented population probably more than other studies. But still, this is not, to our liking. We really like to have more participants from different walk of lives and hopefully be able to generalize the effects of medications and also the side effects related to medications.
And let me step in and say this because when I was going through my medical issues, I remember reading certain documents and I would see uh, race mentioned a lot. And sometimes I felt some kind of way about that until I realized, you have to factor that in because of the generational environment that many of our ancestors came from and our genetic makeup, could be different. And it wasn't a thing the way I wanted to feel at first. Now, why is this so important? What, he's trying to figure out who I am? But a lot of those reports had to include that in there. So whoever was reading reports had that knowledge, and was nothing, nothing sideways about it. But it was just important to the research and the development of whatever they needed to do to treat certain patients. So I just had to throw that in because I think that's important. If anybody, might feel like I did in the beginning, why is this important? Why they keep bringing this up? Why they have to know who I am? And some people felt like because they knew that they might not get the best treatment, and we can debunk that right now because it was significant in another way.
Mm-hmm.
You one thing that I want to just add to what you said is that when you take a look at, for example, African Americans compared to non-Hispanic whites, um, it seems that the biology or the disease process may be a little bit different. Um, so there are some diagnostic tests that we use for Alzheimer's. For example, there are some biomarkers that we look into in spinal tap, like lumbar puncture. We perform lumbar puncture, look at some proteins in CSF, cerebrospinal fluid, and then we look at some imaging studies. One of them is the PET scan, and that we are able to visualize the culprit of Alzheimer's disease, which is those, which are those plaques, amyloid plaques in the brain. And there seems to be some differences in terms of deposition of those plaques, at least the timing, or positivity of, cerebrospinal fluid for Alzheimer's disease, or now even a plasma biomarker blood test that we have right now available, which is a new thing. So there seems to be some differences in terms of prevalence or frequency of these tests being positive. And no one knows exactly why, but at least these are based on new evidence that there is a difference in terms of presentation, in terms of the process in terms of the trajectory of the disease in different races and ethnicities. And we're trying really to figure out why with studies like even, a head study that Carol is one of the participants in that study. And of course, participation of, again, different races and ethnicities is quite important to figure out what's going on in different races and ethnicities in the brain.
Mhm.
Yes, and to sort of backtrack on our last video to get people up to speed that might not have seen that last one. And Carol, I remember you saying you were being a part of the study, how much more you learned about the
Mhm.
disease. And, we heard dementia and Alzheimer's sort of interchanged a lot, but they're
Yeah.
quite different. Really, one is under the umbrella of another. So,
Mhm.
doctor, if you will, and Carol, if you want to step in, explain the differences of between them and the similarities. I mean, they are connected. They are
Yeah.
connected, but
And
they're
and
not
I'm
the same.
and I'm gonna let the doctor. He can tell you, give you much more information. But the two are different. Dementia is Alzheimer's is a dementia, and there are
Hmm.
several other dementias. But as far as Alzheimer's, that's the prevalent one for our community. We
Right.
have, yeah, we have a large amount of a number of people who are actually diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and I think I even know Dr. Kwabi, someone who has Parkinson's. Um, Dementia, but he'll elaborate on it. And Doctor, could you also elaborate on, and you kind of glazed over it, the other method of diagnosing Alzheimer's?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, as you said, Carol, yeah, rightfully so. Uh, Dementia is the big umbrella. So essentially, dementia is when people have memory loss, and in our memory clinic with our pen and paper memory test, we can detect that in their performance in the memory test when we compare them with other people the same age and the same education. When those people now become dependent in real life, for example, they need assistance with managing finances or driving or medications, that is called dementia. So dementia is a syndrome, and that's the definition of dementia. But then under this umbrella of dementia, there are several hundreds of different causes. And Alzheimer's happens to be the most common one. But as Carol mentioned, for example, we have dementia due to Alzheimer's, we have dementia due to Parkinson's disease, we have dementia due to vascular issues, and so on and so forth. So dementia is the big umbrella. Underneath, there are several hundred different causes of dementia. Some of those causes are reversible. For example, sometimes people with depression, severe depression, may affect their memory and day-to-day function. And of course, when we treat depression, uh, you know, it it may help. And or for example, the thyroid issues or vitamin B12 deficiencies, those are like kind of more of a reversible causes. Although reversible causes are not too many, but then there's a different category which is called neurodegenerative causes. For example, Alzheimer's being one of them, the main one, that they are progressive. And at this point, unfortunately, we don't have any cure. However, the field has really advanced significantly, and we have some medications that we can slow it down significantly. So that's really, we are in the right track. And of course, we can probably talk about that later on. But as far as diagnosis, Carol, as you mentioned, and I know that some of them, you've been really involved now so much. Your knowledge is quite extensive, but there are mainly three ways of diagnosing Alzheimer's disease. One of them, when I say main diagnosis, is diagnosis with very high confidence. One of them is a PET scan, which is called amyloid PET scan. This is different types of imaging. Like, for example, we have CT scan of brain, we have MRI of brain, we have PET scan of brain as well. This PET scan, this specific PET scan, can detect those amyloid plaques in the brain of patients with Alzheimer's disease. This test is very powerful and very accurate, over 95% accuracy. If this test is positive, 95%, this is Alzheimer's. If it is negative, then 95% it is not Alzheimer's disease. And by the way, this test could become positive even 20 years before people develop dementia or symptoms. The second test is spinal tap. Spinal tap is like kind of sticking, your back and get some cerebrospinal fluid. What we do, we check some tests, some biomarkers, or some labs, some proteins in the cerebrospinal fluid, and that test is also very extremely accurate, over 90% accurate. If it is positive, then this is Alzheimer's. If it is negative, it is not. Now, the new exciting thing in the field right now, since last time that we talked, Slim, that's actually the new blood tests. And these blood tests are also extremely accurate. So in the blood test, what we do, we also check kind of the same type of proteins that we check in cerebrospinal fluid, either amyloid or tau, and they tend to be also over 90% accurate. So that's quite powerful. So you can imagine that probably maybe in the very near future, we may have something like a blood test that it can really replace the PET scan or spinal tap. Keep in mind that the PET scan requires lots of resources. This
Yeah.
is a test that you really need to go to an imaging center, and then quite expensive as well. That's over $10,000 here in our area. Then requires a specialist to read that. Spinal tap being a little bit invasive, although it's actually quite well tolerated, and we do quite a few per month in our center. But now, with this blood test, it would be like you go to your doctor and you check your sugar or you check your cholesterol. You can go there, can order it, and it can tell us with high confidence whether this is Alzheimer's or not. Although it is not still yet prime time for use, especially in primary care physicians' offices. It definitely requires lots of education and training to our primary care physician, when to order, what to order, how to order, for what patients. You're still far from there. But for people like myself in the memory clinic, that is something that is coming soon. In fact, we've been using this test for the past couple of years in selected patients. And guidelines and how to use these tests for memory specialists like myself is coming. In fact, in July, there is a conference in Toronto, Alzheimer's Association International Conference. And in that conference, the guidelines will be presented and will be published. So then hopefully everyone will have good insight in how to order and when to order. And just full disclosure, I'm actually one of those panel members of that committee that are developing these guidelines. So we will be presenting again in July in Toronto.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You got to let me know what day that is, because I'll be there, and I'll be on the panel on that Friday.
Wow,
Yeah.
great, great. And by the way, this Alzheimer's Association International Conference, this is the biggest conference in the world about Alzheimer's disease. Quite exciting. Usually over 20,000 people participate either in person or virtually. And of course, Carol has been also a very, very important part of this as well, participating and presenting. So this year, Carol and I will be there.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you, Alice Curry Johnson, for your comment. We appreciate you watching and making your comments. And I will also repeat that if anyone has any questions during this time, please make sure you put them in the comments and we'll try to address them. And Carol, I guess I'm glad we can still hear you because we can't see you anymore. But
You can't,
I guess
and I see myself on here.
you see yourself. Well, we
Yeah.
can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh my
I don't
gosh.
think it's anything on my end, but anyway, while you work on that, I wanted to say, Doctor, even though, yeah, thanks for that update on there you go.
Okay.
Thanks for that update on what's going on there in progress. Even though right now it's no cure for it, but every day that's why these trials and everything are so important to
Hmm.
continuously work on, different medications that, and the more you know about it and the causes of it, the more you'll be able to one day defeat it. I always was curious about because I had a close friend of mine that grew up in the neighborhood, and I think I went to a homecoming at my college in 2015, and he let us know that he had been tested and he, was positive for, and I saw him last year and he didn't recognize me. But I always wondered how is that? When you get the diagnosis and you know it's coming. You know, I guess the one good thing about it, with it being such a slow acting disease, that you have time to get things in order if that need be, or because it's not well at least some I don't know, it's not as aggressive as some other diseases that you find out and they tell you, 2 weeks or something like that, but it's something. And in a lot of cases, I guess what you mentioned about the blood test, that's a good thing too, because people can find out. The sooner you find out, the more you can be pres- put on medication that will prolong the effects of it. And maybe while you're prolonging the effects of it, a cure will come. Who knows? But I just always wondered how those people that know, how do you deal with that? It seems like I think I would have to seek some uh, extra help. Some counseling or something like that to help me. Just cope with that, knowing that it's something that at some point, you know, I might not recognize people that I love, and I might, and it comes in many ways, aggressively or something like that. But I'm going on and on. But
Yeah.
I'll let you respond to that if you have a response for
And
it.
you know what, James, my mom has been diagnosed with mild cognitive, and Dr. Quabi is her geriatrician. One thing that we really need to get um, really vigilant about is making sure that our mental health and our brain is taken care of. A lot of people don't understand the different things that could go on in their life that affects them and could cause dementia. My dad had it really bad, and he would not keep hearing aids in his at all. I mean, he lost $6,000 pairs of hearing aids, and
Mm,
and purchased them twice, but would not put them in. So his hearing was a real factor, a real big factor in that disease for him, because he couldn't hear. And if your brain can't decipher things, you're gonna basically destroy it little by little. And
mm,
that's a big part of our a lot of our vitals we need to make sure that we take care of, because um we want to live. I mean, who wants to walk around, like you said, James, and not know who people are?
mhm.
People that your own relatives, a lot of times, a lot of them don't know. um and Dr. Kwame, when my mom comes to you, like, is it once a quarter?
Usually, yeah, usually
Yeah.
every 6 months, and then sometimes every year that we repeat the memory test and see where we are.
Right, and that's what she does. And it's a part of my regimen also is still the memory test. And I don't take my infusions every other week now. I do it once a month, but I still take the memory test. So those kinds of things are really important. If you think you have a problem, um, uh, outside of the norm. Everybody loses their keys. You might forget something and place it somewhere. I forgot. But if you feel that it's a serious problem with you, you really need to get it checked out. And if you have like underlying issues, you can talk to them about that too, and they can let you know what can be done in reference to your situation. But it's very important for us to keep our brains healthy.
Can I just add to Carol? I'm so glad that you brought up the hearing loss. It's just um, so important. In fact, I had a talk on Saturday in Williamsburg, and it was actually in Alzheimer's in American Parkinson's Disease Association. As you probably know, Parkinson's also can cause dementia,
Right.
and I had a few slides related to hearing because it's so important. If you take a look at evidence, mild hearing loss increases the risk of dementia twice,
Wow.
by two times, two folds. If you have moderate hearing loss, that increases by three times, three folds. And if you have profound hearing loss, that increases risk of dementia by five times. And then there is a study, they looked at people who uh, had treated hearing loss with hearing aids, something simple, versus people who had untreated hearing loss. When you treat hearing loss, you can decrease risk of development of dementia by 70%. That's
Wow.
quite significant. That
Wow.
is quite
Wow. That's
significant. So this is very, very important, especially in middle age, older age. If there is hearing loss, I think about memory rather than anything else. Yes, of course, people would like to communicate, people would like to be social. Those are all important and they affect memory. But this is all, the hearing loss is really all about memory loss, about dementia. So that's very, very important. There are quite a few other risk factors as well. For example, sleep apnea. People who have untreated sleep apnea, that increases the risk of dementia significantly. And you can imagine when people have sleep apnea, and probably I'm going to explain what sleep apnea is for some of your uh, listeners. Sleep apnea is when people stop breathing during the night while they're asleep. And of course, what happens is the oxygen level in the brain drops, and that can damage brain cells, and that increases risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. That's something that we can fix easily. So for that reason, when people come to us and they do have, let's say, dementia for any reason, for example, Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or vascular dementia, we always look into other factors that can also expedite their memory loss, including sleep apnea, including hearing loss, including medications, including blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, smoking. These are all important to really address and manage.
Mhm.
wow. That's amazing. I'm glad you mentioned those too, doctor, because and I think it's good for family members and associates to know these things, especially with the hearing loss, because a lot of times you see people dealing with someone with hearing loss and they get frustrated because the person didn't hear them and they have to repeat it or speak louder. And
Mhm.
sometimes you have to consider that that person, is, you might have to make that effort to make sure they hear you and understand you.
Mhm.
You just can't get frustrated because that person didn't hear you. It's a reason for them not being able to hear you. And I've seen that so often. People get frustrated and not want to repeat what they said, or get mad or fuss at the person. So it's a lot of
Mhm.
things we have to consider when we get older, or even not as old, have hearing loss and certain things that we have to sort of be patient
Mhm.
with people that's going on and making sure. And like we mentioned earlier, doctor, all these things, medical things are connected. You know, uh, just the overall taking care of your health can improve so many things, and
Mhm.
everything is connected. And you mentioned all of the diabetes, and probably most people either have diabetes or sleep apnea or hearing loss,
Right.
and never thought about this could affect my brain cells to the point
Mhm.
where you know I could be caught up in this disease. So And
Hmm.
doctor, here's a question there for you from Alice Curry Johnson. I don't know.
Yeah.
Can you see it?
Yes, I can see. I can probably, read that. We know as we get older, our memory becomes a little less. But when you start forgetting more recently or more often, should you get tested for dementia? Well, Alice, thank you very much for this good question. You know, I can't really tell you how many times this actually is brought up and asked. In fact, again, last Saturday when I had the talk, this was brought up as well. So let me kind of give a little bit of a background. There are certain things that are, normal. So we have age-related memory loss, and age-related memory loss is like, for example, you may sometime, uh, forget what day of the week is, right? So if you're right now, if you're on vacation, if you're on vacation, you may actually mix it up. Or if you don't really work, then who cares? Is it Saturday or is it Tuesday, right?
Mhm.
Or maybe like finding the right word when you talk about something, tip of the tongue, right? So this happens to all of us. Or maybe you talk to someone and that person introduces, themselves, and then in like 30 seconds, you totally forget what the names are. That's quite embarrassing. Happens to me, right? It's very embarrassing when you can't really remember, and that person just told you the
Right.
name. So these all happen to all of us. But if it happens or like misplacing your phone or your remote control, that happens. But if it happens more often, more frequently, then that could be a concern. So we all deal with kind of memory loss related to aging, but there's something beyond normal aging. So there's something we call it subjective memory complaint. If people notice that their memory is not really as it used to be, before, they're not as sharp as they used to be, there are some red flags to look into. And those red flags is that if subjective memory complaint happens after the age of 60, the age of 59, 60, that becomes important. Or, your loved ones, your spouses, your children, they do have the same concern as well. Or when you compare yourself to your friends, the same age, the same education, then you feel that your memory is not as good as theirs, that becomes significant. Or you have a family history of dementia or Alzheimer's disease, that becomes much more important. Or the other thing is, if you have cardiovascular risks, multiple cardiovascular risks, for example, if you have blood pressure, and then on top of that, you have diabetes, or you have cholesterol, and you have heart problem, then and you have subjective memory problem, like what you said, that your memory is not as good as it used to be, then that becomes quite significant. And I think that's the time that we suggest to seek medical advice. And nowadays it's different from even 2 years ago, because now within the last 2 years we have two medications that these are disease modifying agents. This is the first time in the history of Alzheimer's, which is very exciting. This is the first time that we have medications that we can slow down the memory loss. We can change the trajectory. And for that reason, the sooner the better. Based on the studies, if we catch it sooner, then that's much, much better effect. We have a more impactful effect with medications if we actually find it earlier.
Hmm.
So if any of those things happen that I just, said, then probably you need to see someone. And by the way, here's another thing that I'm going to say. At that stage, when it's very, very mild, probably if you talk to your primary care physicians, they're going to do a very simple screening test, usually something 30 questions that are simple, not really that difficult. And you're going to pass with flying colors. Probably you're going to be told, well, everything is normal. Unfortunately, there is still a possibility that this is not normal, but it's just because you're the changes are so subtle. Those kind of tests cannot probably pick it up. So that requires much, much more comprehensive testing. For example, we have a 60 to 90 minutes of battery of pen and paper test, which tells us whether there's something going on or not, much, much more sensitive. So at that stage, probably you need to see a memory specialist rather than primary care physicians. And majority of these places that they do see, they don't even need referral. For example,
That's
us
right.
in our memory center, we don't really need referral. We just, when people come, we see them. When they make the appointment, we see them and we make the, the assessment. Now, one thing that I'm going to just make sure that everyone actually hears and kind of remembers, always the baseline is very important, to have a baseline test, because when we do the baseline test, the first assessment, that's your baseline test. We compare you with other people the same age, the same education. Well, that's quite good and accurate. But then the next one, when we do, that's comparing you with you, which is much, much more accurate.
Mhm.
So baseline assessment is always good to have, and again, that helps for future issues, future problems with the memory.
Mhm.
Wow.
With-
I see you kind of answered the question. I see Shona Swinson put up there. It's happening to her all the time now. Uh,
So
and okay,
that would be James. That would be my recommendation. If that happens, just seek medical advice. Have
Right.
it checked. I think that will help significantly. And one thing, that I want to just mention, if you don't mind, just before we move forward, is that, for example, Carol right now, uh, in the clinical trial that she is, this is for preclinical stage.
Mhm.
So essentially, right now we have two medications that they do slow down memory loss at the stage that people have dementia, early stage dementia, or early stage memory loss. Now we set the clock back. So with the study that Carol is in right now, we set the clock back about 15 years when people don't have memory loss, but they started to have those plaques in the brain. And that's really the right timing to address the problem.
Mhm. And really, the
and
only
she
way
wants
you're
to
going
know.
to find that out is getting checked out. Really, anybody that has a serious issue or feel really comfortable about their memory should do that because, um, like I said in our last broadcast, my father's side of the family were saturated with Alzheimer's, and that's really why Ray and I got involved because we found out that we had the amyloid plaque. Ray had the APOE four twice. He had it from my mom and dad, and I only had one, and I had a APO three, but we wouldn't know that if we didn't get it checked out. So if you even have it in your family, and it doesn't have to be your mom and dad. My mother has nobody on her side of the family with dementia, but she's getting it. So you really can't be too careful.
Right, and sometimes I guess if there's no family history, well, what you mentioned earlier, other things that can cause it, like sleep apnea,
Right.
and, diabetes, and all those other things, you
Mhm.
still could be susceptible
That's right.
to the disease. So
That's
it's not
exactly
all
right.
about always about family history, but that's a good starting point. And
Right.
Shona wants to know if is it a memory center affiliate in Atlanta? She lives in Atlanta that you know of that she can
Sure, sure.
check
Well,
out.
in Atlanta, I think the best would be really the Emory. Emory has a very good memory clinic, and I think I would suggest to just have it checked, there.
Okay, yeah, that's probably good information for her. And
Hmm.
Shona is living in Atlanta, but she's also Ray and our classmate, Carol,
Yeah, I her
1972.
name look
Yeah,
familiar.
yes, Shona Cho. That's her
and
maiden name.
and another thing we're doing. I'm on the advisory board, um, in reference to partnershiping, connecting the bridge between the researchers and the community and or the participants. So that effort to James is something that's really important because sometimes our researchers are kind of out of touch because they're like in their into their thing and on their grind, because we kind of, I told, when I know when I had the when I did my presentation, Dr. Carver, when you were there, I think it was in Texas, I believe, and I told them, I mean, we look at them as nerds, and we look at them as untouchable. So there's a big push now for researchers to partner and get more familiar with the people who will actually be using the medicines that are being looked at, as well as uh, their family and anybody else that knows about it. So it's good for them to be more personable and get to know people more, come out of the box and see what we need. You know, it's easy to sit and do your work, but when you have other people that are being affected because of your work, it's good to know what they need, how it affects them, what can be done better, what doesn't work. And those are the kinds of things that we are kind of like looking at as a partnership. And
Yeah, and Carol has done such a wonderful job. I've been, um, present when she talks, and she's part of panels, and it's just amazing how people listen to her, and also the other members of the advisory board, and this is very helpful because we really need to hear firsthand from people who are involved and also from caregivers. And I think that's really the best way that it really works hand in hand. Researchers working with patients, caregivers, listen to them, learn from them, and then be able to apply science in those situations.
Yeah, and I think when Carol comes back, I want her to talk about how to organize something like that, because when these churches and different organizations have these health fairs, it also be good for someone to maybe set up a booth concerning Alzheimer's and dementia. The more information we get out there, the better. The sooner people will get diagnosed, and the sooner people will recognize that something might be wrong. I'm just not forgetting my keys. It's just something that comes with age. It might be something else that can be treated, even
Exactly.
though
And
there's no
again,
cure for it right now, but it can be treated.
yeah, and yes, there's really no cure right now, but we have, yeah, for so many other disease processes, we don't have any cure, but we have something
Right.
to slow down. And now for Alzheimer's, we do have. So it's so important. And what's really heartbreaking is that it is not uncommon for me to see patients maybe once per week or so, that they come to us, to our memory center, and they are at advanced stage of dementia, and that's their first time that they're seeking medical advice. And this is heartbreaking. This is probably too late to help them. Well, still, we can help, but I always wish that they would have really come much earlier, especially again now that we have medications available that we can, and we have also powerful tools to diagnose correctly with the PET scan, with the spiral tap, and now with the blood test.
And and doctor, I want to ask you this because a lot of people been together. My wife and I, yesterday we celebrated 43 years of marriage, and people are
oh,
together for a long time, and they really believe in the vows they made in sickness and in health. They'll be there. But at what point, and I guess it's different for everybody because a lot of people say, "Well, I'm gonna take care of my spouse. I'm gonna do what I can." But at some point, during the disease, it depends on the severity of it. You know, when do you, suggest it, or when I guess it's different for everybody, but at some point you're going to have to make that decision to turn your loved one over to professionals, because it could bring you down, health
exactly.
wise, and uh, put a lot of stress on you. And I know it's hard. I know it's hard, but it's hard to have someone, you know, the possibilities of being physical or emotionally abusive, and that's not their nature. So
Hmm.
at some point, we have to make that decision.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I think probably uh, Carol can also, share some, experience with, with mom, with dad, how uh, exhaustive,
Yeah.
this job is. This is a marathon, right? So this is a 24/7 uh, job.
Mhm.
And the issue is that, you didn't know about that. You just got drafted into it, right?
Mhm.
So essentially, there was really no caregiving school that people go through. And then, they are ready for this job. And because Alzheimer's uh, really affects different aspects of every person. It's not just only memory. It's about personality. It's about behavior,
Behavior. Right.
and sometimes those things could be quite significant. So it all, to answer your question about at what time, it all depends on what kind of symptoms people have and what is the tolerance level. So I have patients who, at the very beginning, start having uh, issues with hallucinations, disturbing hallucinations, delusional thoughts, agitation, and unfortunately, neuropsychiatric symptoms. These are called neuropsychiatric symptoms. Happens in almost 100% of our patients. So someone probably at the very beginning, they may have more of depression or anxiety or something else that we call it apathy, lack of interest in doing things. And then later on, when the disease progresses, it may turn into agitation. It may
Mhm.
turn into aggressiveness, hallucinations, delusional thoughts. And sometimes these are quite disturbing and very difficult to treat, and that could be a turning point for caregivers for really giving up to professionals. Or, of course, when people start going through the process and then different stages of Alzheimer's disease, in advanced stages or even moderately severe stage, they require significant amount of help with managing day-to-day activities, for example, bathing, grooming, dressing. And you can imagine, you know, people who develop Alzheimer's and dementia, they're not young, right? So they
Right.
are usually in their 70s, 80s, and probably people who are taking care of these patients are also kind of the same. I'm talking about spouses.
Mhm.
So it's very, very difficult, and it's quite, taxing for them to take care of these people, or even if they're not really that old, for example, children. Well, they probably have their own family. They probably have their own issues. They probably still work. It would be very, very difficult to really provide support that they need. So, in different patients, in different families, I think the reason that people are, kind of put in place is different. But those are the major reasons that patients, unfortunately, have to really go to facilities, mainly neuropsychiatric symptoms. That's one of the main ones. And then, of course, the second one is the amount of help that they need to address their day to day care.
Mhm. That is so true, because my dad, when he went through, was going through his, you could see the progression, and exactly what you said, Dr. Quavi, ended up getting agitated, and with the agitation, he started getting a little violent with it, and the thing about it is, after that, his episodes are over with. If you would tell him about it, he would basically tell you, we were basically not telling the truth, because they really don't know. They really don't know what they're doing. That's why you really need to know when to turn them over. My mom hated my dad to have to leave, and we did too. But
Yeah,
for
I
her
mean, it's
safety,
not easy. Yeah,
it was just something that had to be done, because he needed
right.
more professional help than he would have been able to get, staying at home. So
And often
I
it's for
think
their own
everybody,
protection.
yeah, exactly, and everybody really needs to be aware of it, and of their loved one, and just seeing just where they're going with their behavior, with their memory, with things. I know, even for my mom, at one time, and this is just something simple like bathing, and she would, for her, and it was with my dad too, because my dad really did not like to bathe, period. So that was a struggle too. But she's not like that. But she's changed that. Dr. Quavi, instead of her doing the, I'm having to get after her about Saturdays because a long time ago it was a thing, and I don't know, James, if you have heard it, they say you take a bath on Saturdays whether you need it or not. That was my daddy's motto. So
Yeah,
evidently my mother
that was the thing
adopted it.
back in the day.
Yeah, wasn't it? My mother adopted it too. But now
Yeah.
every night it just
Hmm.
it just happened just like that. We just sat back and watched that happen. So things like
Hmm.
that, they change, and some of them change for the better, some of them change for the worse. So just to, just keep an eye on that. And caregiving is it's really is sad seeing your loved ones like that, and it's also um it could be mentally straining. So it's good for you to take. I'm a part of Billie Jean Montgomery's caregiving group at Third Baptist. Ray and I both
Hmm.
go to that. You have to get out and do things for yourself and take care of yourself in order to take care of somebody else. Because
Indeed.
this disease, the way it affects people in so many different ways, you have no idea. You have people who may lay in the bed and they have Alzheimer's, and they may not say anything or do it. Then you have them that are up and about and you really cannot control them. And it gets frustrating. So you really need to make sure that you do what you need to do to take care of your own mental health. And
And
you
I,
go
I
ahead.
just I just wanted to follow up on what you said, Carol, about this disease affects different people in so many different ways, and that's so true. That's so
Yeah.
true. There are no two patients similar. Every patient actually is different, and as you mentioned, Carol, for example, mom and dad, totally
Mm,
different, right? Different presentation of the disease,
right.
process. Of course, I've been taking care of, mom, and how delightful she is, right? She actually comes to some of our programs, educational programs, and it's
Right.
just amazing. Of course, everyone loves her, and she is really uh, the light of the party, I would say, when she actually comes to us. So it's totally different. Different people, different presentation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
and
also be aware of the fact that other people are aware of their loved ones, like church members or whatever, because when for instance, if they call the house and leave me a message, they don't understand that my mom's not able to relay that to me.
right.
So I'm missing things because they're not coming to me. So it's good too for family members to let others know, hey, this is what happened, if you need anything important, if you could just contact me. Because if you don't do
Yeah.
that, they won't know, and the person with dementia won't be able to tell them that, or won't tell them that.
Yeah, and I understand people's privacy, and people want to be private,
Hmm.
but in some cases like this, you should let
Yeah.
people know that because you might miss something very important. And
Yeah.
it's amazing the extremes of it can be. We had a lady in our neighborhood. She was always so nice, but when she
Hmm.
got dementia or Alzheimer's, she was even nicer, even though
Oh
she
wow.
didn't know who we were. She had no idea who we were, but every time you saw her, she would smile, "How you doing? And how's everything?" And that's what I say, the extremes. And on the other
Yeah.
end, it's completely different. So, but they always worried about her wandering off. And
Mm-hmm.
how many times you see on the news, where somebody has wandered off. And it's just like a child, you take your eyes off for 1 minute and they go out the door,
Hmm.
and they just walk. So it's
Hmm.
a lot to the caregivers. So you just have to
Hmm.
govern yourself accordingly about what you can take. But
Hmm. That's
that
true.
that was good to mention. And we're about coming to the hour, and Doctor, I want to ask you this: these studies, how are they funded? Because I have to mention this because certain things in medicine now are getting so political, and everybody's worrying about cutting here, cutting there, and some of the people that are making these cuts, maybe they need to watch these shows, you know, when they're trying to think they're doing efficient things, but they're really cutting some programs that are very useful and helpful. So, other than people worrying about that, how is it funded, and can people contribute or donate to these studies on a personal basis, just in case
Sure.
they go
I'm so
crazy
glad that
politically?
you asked, this, James, because I'm going to talk about really an exciting opportunity that I'm trying to, start here. But just to answer your question about the funding, there are mainly three different major sources of funding. Uh, One is, of course, NIA and NIH, National Institute of Health and the National Institute on Aging. And the funding for Alzheimer's, has really grown significant. The federal funding from NIH and NIA has grown significant. It's just to give you an idea. I think that was in 2000, probably 15, 16, something like that, or 17. The total amount of federal funding was about a little bit under $500 million. Now, of course, thanks to Alzheimer's Association, with their effort, it has grown significantly year by year. And last year, it was $3.8 billion with the B. And that has really helped significantly to advance the science. That's one source. And unfortunately, as you said, that is right now under attack, and for some cutting, and some of our actually projects also, and we haven't had any cut yet, but they're under scrutiny, and there's a risk for the cut. Now, the second source is pharma and pharmaceutical companies. Now, here's something that I want to make sure that everyone understands, that for pharma to run a clinical trial, first of all, their project or protocol usually is written by academia, by universities, by experts. And then it goes, it actually has to follow all the FDA rules, because FDA is not going to approve medications unless certain criteria, very strict criteria, are met. So that's what happens. For example, for medications that right now they're available, one of them was run by Eisai, and the other one run by Eli Lilly, and they sponsored this studies with over, I think, $200 million for each project, and to show that the efficacy. That's the second source of funding. The third source of funding is philanthropy. So donation, as you mentioned, James. So that's another source for funding. For example, we in our memory center, we have the three sources. We have some studies that are pharma, we have some studies that are NIA and NIH, and other sources of organizations like Alzheimer's Association actually can fund, and also philanthropy. Now, one thing that is really my main area of interest is really the changes or differences that we see in patients with Alzheimer's in African Americans versus non-Hispanic whites. So I started a registry project in our area, and this is inclusive, everyone. And then I realized that we have really the great opportunity of having just an exclusionary memory health registry for African Americans. So I'm right now in the process of working with some people in the community, some leaders in the community, to start this project. And of course, you can imagine, with this political environment, that hasn't been easy. So something that would have taken me 2 months has now taken me 7 or 8 months. But we are in the process, and we're going to start that. This is something that hopefully we will be able to start the process very soon. And I'm so glad that you asked. So those are things that we can certainly maybe talk later on, and maybe have a different show to discuss further. So hopefully soon we will have an African American brain health registry here in our area.
Yay.
Well, thanks a lot, and I'm glad you made that point.
Hmm.
So people don't get offended like I did at first, and I admit it. Oh, why you have to know all that? Let's treat me. you know, but I want to thank you both again, and like we said before, this will be a continuous effort on our part to share information about these diseases. And we're looking forward for you coming back. I want to thank all the people that were watching that had questions and shared personal information about themselves or their family members. That always helps when you share. It always can help someone else in the same position. So, if we don't, do you all have any last words you might want to relay before we sign off?
I just want
Carol?
to thank you, James, for allowing us this platform in with the community that you do have, and I'm glad that I was able to pull Dr. Quavi away. He's so busy, so busy,
Yes.
and and I'm just grateful for that because he's a wealth of information, and I just hope that this more and more people join so that they can get more knowledgeable about Alzheimer's and not just think about it or just cast it to the side because it's out here. It's out
Yeah.
here affecting millions of families, our families. So more
And it's
knowledge we get, the better we'll be.
you're exactly right. It's been around for a long time, and like you just said, the more knowledge we get, the better
Mhm,
off the people that are affected by it will be.
mhm.
And one day, doctor, a cure.
Absolutely. And again, I wanted also to thank you, James. This is a great opportunity, a great audience. Um, I'm going to just reiterate in what I said, before that now it's a different time. It really is a different time. So within the last 2 years, we've had so much of advancement in the field, so much of exciting things, and so much to come. So I'll give you an example. In Toronto, the results of a study called U.S. Pointers, which is about non-medicinal approach to slashing the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's. It's a 2 year study in several US centers, and the results are going to come back, I think, in July. So that's quite exciting. Will give us more information about how exercise, or how brain training, or how socialization, or how taking care of your cardiovascular risks is going to help to prevent Alzheimer's disease. That's one study. And then in October of this year, the results of the study on Ozempic. You all probably have heard of Ozempic, that medicine for diabetes. This is a pill form of the injection, but this is a pill form. The result actually is coming out to see if that can prevent Alzheimer's or help people who have early stages of Alzheimer's disease. And again, the blood tests that are available now, we get much more into that. So there's a lot of exciting, possibilities that is coming. So what I would really say that if you notice a change, if you notice some decline, don't wait. This is really the time. Time is sensitive,
Mhm.
especially now that we have medications that we can slow down memory loss significantly. I think you should really take advantage of that. There is no stigma. There is no stigma. Alzheimer's is like other type of disease processes, like blood pressure, like cholesterol. And now that we have treatments, I think we should really take advantage of that. And of course, that comes with education. And again, for that reason, James, I really am so thankful to you for providing this opportunity for us to communicate with your audience.
Yes, thanks, doctor, and thanks for taking your time out of your busy schedule to come with us. Because I would have
Yeah,
moved
I
this
don't know
show
what's going
around
on
to
my
any
end,
time to
James.
accommodate you.
I'm gonna
What'd you
go to
say,
Yeah.
Dr.
Carl?
Aquabi.
Uh-oh. Hopefully she'll come back before. But in the meantime, I want to thank again everybody for watching, and make sure you share this information. And you can still make comments on the recording part. And if you're watching on my YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you'll know when we come back with more information about these diseases. And we appreciate you, and take care. I was kind of, okay, hold on. I see Carol is coming back. I want to give her the opportunity.
I don't know what's
All
going
right.
on this end, James. I have no idea. I just keep getting kicked off. I'm gonna go to one of you next time. I'm gonna come into your house, James, or your office, Dr. Quam.
Yeah, just come here and sit beside me, and hopefully, the connection is good here. But I think you were up here enough to
Yeah,
spread
yeah.
spread the
This
word, to
internet
share the
is
message. So we
crazy.
appreciate you. Yes.
Appreciate you as
All
well.
right.
Thank you very much. Bye.
All righty. Talk to you later, Dr. Quavi.
Bye. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye bye.